Greetings, dear. Blah, 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 blah. Red leather, yellow leather. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan. Greetings, dear listeners. This is Jonah Goldberg, host of the Remnant Podcast, brought to you by the Dispatch and Dispatch Media. Today we have, as you could probably, because I have no doubt Adama's going to keep the cackle in. You can already tell we have Brother Stirewalt back for quite a quick turnaround. I don't know, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, something like that. And without getting into too many details, I just want to say to Brother Stirewalt that we are part of a very exclusive club of people who married up, and even more exclusive, married up to women named Jessica. And you in particular are an honest man because you were recently betrothed to your paramour, Jessica Malugin. And I just wanted to say Mazel Tov on the record.
Well, I can say that our Jessicas are alike in another way, which is
they're really intimidating.
they are their own women, right?
Yes.
They are themselves, and the miracle of my Jessica is, and I don't know whether this just comes with age or what it is for me, but to love somebody and marry somebody who I don't want to be anything other than themselves. It's a really cool thing, because when you're young, you're like, this is great, but I need her to be this way or change that or do this, or if she would do this for me. But in this case, it was a wonderful courtship, and I can say that day 3 of marriage continues to be great, simply because I love her just like she is. I just want her to be her, and that makes me very, very happy.
Here. All right, we're not. I mean, already we're gonna get all sorts of like maudlin feedback from people about how romantic and sensy we are. So we'll just move on.
Just the known truth about us.
That's right. Let's just start spitting and scratching to
There you go.
compensate for all this. All right. So speaking of manliness, raw, cruel, ubermenschy manliness, our dear president has announced that he wants to reopen Alcatraz.
Amazing.
And it's funny that this came up when it came up, because just the other day, on Sunday, on Sunday, ABC did a package about the really, really disturbing corruptiness of all the crypto stuff that the Trump family is doing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Trump said at one of these crypto conferences in Saudi Arabia or Mar-a-Lago or someplace was, we're going to create the Fort Knox of crypto. And one of the things I loved about it is that it's actually very similar to Hillary's thing about how her rogue server was guarded by the Secret Service.
Yeah.
Because that's how you if you want to get classified data off of a server, is you have to get past armed guards, right?
That's the whole thing.
It's like in Zoolander. The files are in the computer. And so Fort Knox of crypto is an extra strong hard drive. But anyway, the point is that he thinks in these terms, right? He thinks in these iconic things, Gitmo, Wall, Fort Knox, Alcatraz. And it's really kind of stupid, but you can kind of understand it, right? And politically, the only place I'll go, and then you can take it any way you want, is that there is one way in which this serves his public policy ends in a non-trivial, non-stupid way, which is that if your goal is to get illegal immigrants to self-deport, just talking about sending them to Alcatraz creates a climate that people say, maybe we should get out of here. That's not stupid. There's some of that going on a whole bunch of ways about the way they talk about immigration. But beyond that, have you ever been to Alcatraz?
I have.
Yeah. They're not rehabbing that into a supermax prison. Yeah.
They're not ready. They're not ready.
So what do you make of it all?
Well, I saw the report that the local TV down that serves Palm Beach was showing Escape from Alcatraz a few hours before the tweet that announced the Alcatraz policy. And then when he was asked by a reporter, how did you, what brought this to mind? And he said, well, I'm a producer, right? And I thought it was a very real insight into how he thinks about things. And he wants to show strength, and he wants to say that we have this terrible prison, and if you're bad, we'll send you to this terrible prison and you'll be eaten by sharks. You can also understand it as the new phase that we're in for the second Trump administration. So the first 3 months, we can do anything we want 100% of the time, and we don't care what you think. It's happening. Will we deport Americans to a prison camp in Central America, citizens? We're looking into it. Maybe we're going to do it. Maybe we're going to do it. Alcatraz strikes me as that somebody said, you know, it's going to be hard to ship American citizen criminals out of the country. But what if we had a really scary, bad prison, right? What if you could produce, as a filmmaker would, this scary, scary prison that we'll send people to and they'll be eaten by sharks. And then it's a project he can get engaged in and do. We saw today, we're recording this on Tuesday, we saw today that he was going to rename, he said, Veterans Day, bold move. Mm-hmm. He was going to rename Veterans Day as World War I Victory Day. And they said, well, you know, that's another great idea, sir. Another great idea. But the veterans are a little mad at you over what's going on with the VA and other things. What if we did this? What if we issued a proclamation and we called it this? So I think to some degree, and you heard it in his interview with Kristen Welker from NBC on Sunday. Talked to her a couple weeks ago. Am I running for a third term? Am I serious about it? You better believe it. I'm not kidding. This is no joke. This time, no, you know, I'm not running for a third term. So, you know, my model for Donald Trump is the children of Israel. They will wander, they will stray, they will worship Baal. They will do all the things they're not supposed to do. And then the consequences arise. And the Lord God Jehovah says, hey, and they say, melting it down. Sorry. I don't know what we were doing. So for people who were extremely alarmed in the opening few months of the Trump in the first 16th of the second Trump administration, there should be some encouragement that he is responding. And we saw it on the tariffs and we saw it on other things. He is responding. Now the concern becomes, with so many people pushing in so many places and trying so many different things, and Trump so inconstant on these things, including trade, will it be error, not intent, that is the downfall?
I kind of hate doing, particularly 3 days out, a lot of what did you make of the Meet the Press interview kind of conversations, for all the obvious reasons and some non-obvious reasons, which we will not explore at this time. But I did think it was interesting that when she was asking him about the 2028 stuff, mm-hmm. Well, let me put it this way. I thought it was very funny that the guy who has literally said nobody knows more about the Constitution than I do was basically like, look, I don't know. Is it a constitutional thing I can't run again? I don't know. My lawyer, like, who knows?
I have the best lawyers.
Yeah, we'll find out. But like, I can't. I just don't know, right? I thought was particularly interesting, and you knew ears pricked up everywhere among the criminologists and psephologists that when he was talking about a successor, he listed Marco Rubio first.
Yes,
and he called him Marco.
Yeah,
and then J.D. Vance second.
Yep.
What'd you make of that?
Well, right now, Marco is having his Big Marco is having his Mike Pompeo moment. In the first Trump administration, Mike Pompeo was Donald Trump's Mr. Fix-It, do-it-all on foreign policy. He's CIA director, but he's driving in to give the president his daily brief every day, doing all that stuff, and builds this bigger portfolio. And now, of course, Mike Pompeo had his security detail removed and has been unpersoned by the family. And for Rubio, he fought Elon Musk. He beat Elon Musk substantially, right? He dug in on, I'm going to run the State Department, and you're not going to run the State Department. And it seems like he won. It seems like, Elise Stefanik got spun out because of how close the House is, and Mike Waltz is gone. How long does Pete Hegseth remain in this job? It's the only thing protecting Pete Hegseth, as far as I can tell, is that the foreign policy normies in the Senate Republican Conference are happier, or at least have been happier, to keep Hegseth, who is directionally more normal and responds to pressure, than whoever Laura Loomer would pick to replace him.
Yeah.
But, the comedy of errors around Pete Hegseth and all of that stuff. So Rubio has been the guy. So he caught the ball. How long does that last? And I think the important thing to remember in all of it, Donald Trump said on Sunday that he's not going to run for a third term. What will Donald Trump say in 10 days? If somebody puts a poll number in front of him that he likes, or that his pollster, John McLaughlin, who is, esteemed by none except for Trump, that if he puts a poll in front of Trump that says you're actually more popular than ever and you can do anything you want, then forget it all, I'm back. And that's the thing about the children of Israel. They wander again. So this has been a period where Trump tried to have his 100 days, did his big rally, but it was timed out to a bunch of polls and a bunch of market response that said, this is a mess, right? You're touching 39 in some polls. People are very unhappy, and you got a lot of problems. So he's behaving better. And then when things improve for him, or he thinks they improve for him, he'll behave worse again. And Marco Rubio will be in, Marco Rubio will be out, and go back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah, I thought the tell about that was when Trump said, well, I can tell you, people are constantly asking me about running again in 28. There's a real demand. Like, that is the first stage of auto-gulpy talk, is to talk about how you're reluctant to do this, but the people demand it. I am their servant. And
that was FDR's scam, right?
Yeah.
That was FDR's third term scam, which was he rigged his own convention with the help of the director of public works in Chicago, who had a bunch of guys in the basement and had loudspeakers set up so that Roosevelt could say, Roosevelt could have a statement read that said very cryptically, I'm not seeking, it's Elizabeth Warrenian language, I am not actively seeking a third term. And then they manufacture the chant in the hall, we want Roosevelt, we want Roosevelt. And then it's like, well, if the people are demanding,
right,
what choice do I have but to violate Washington standard?
Who am I to say no?
Who am I to say no
to my paid hacktivist fans out there?
To Steve Bannon. How could I refuse the millions and millions and millions of Americans who Steve Bannon represents?
But but here's the thing. All right, so I listened to our colleague Matt Continetti on the Commentary podcast, which is without John Podhoretz yesterday, at least. And let me just tell you, that's a different podcast. When
Does Abe just run free? Does Abe just goes wild?
He got jiggy with it.
Wow.
He spoke in full sentences and with a couple paragraphs.
I will go back and listen to that.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. It was like Banquo's ghost became corporeal, and sat down at the table. All right, so but Matt was making the point, and I have my disagreements with Matt these days about some of the Trump stuff, but he's a great guy and a very sharp student to these things. And
indeed.
And he was making a very interesting point where he was saying both Rubio and Vance were among the first to make the turn towards national conservatism, right? I mean, we have a real problem with labels these days, trying to figure out what to call things. But they still represent two different kinds, right? Two different strains or flavors. J.D. Vance, who really had I thought, you can overread these things sometimes, but a super creepy response to Bill Kristol the other day on Twitter, talking about how implying that Bill Kristol starts wars Bill Kristol and his ilk start wars that send what Vance described as my countrymen, my people, to go die for them. And the reason I bring that up is because he comes from this Midwestern strain of MAGA that's much more tied to, this is part of Matt's point, tied to sort of Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, that kind of thing. And Rubio, son of immigrants, comes from Florida, which is a very successful Republican state, but also he's a little rosier and more aspirational in his presentation. And I generally agree with that. I think that's an interesting way to think about it, is that these are both people trying to represent different constituencies of the same lane. And
I certainly I agree in part, but I also think that what Rubio did was much more gradual, right? So he first dipped his toe in, I don't know whether it was common sense conservatism or whatever it was. And so he, on the economic front, a guy who launched his 2016 campaign at Uber, I think, or at someplace, who was tech vanguard, revolutionary. We're going to invent our way into the future, a very Reaganite kind of conservatism. Then, after his defeat, took a series of steps on economic policy away from the conservative orthodoxy, and ended up in a place. No, it's common good conservatism.
That's right,
I believe they call it, which is like light Catholic integralism and Aquinian republicanism. So he goes that way, and over the course of years, J.D. Vance, and by the way, Rubio never changed on foreign policy. Rubio's foreign policy remained basically consistent. He became rhetorically different, but have to contain Russia, have to confront China, have to deal with Iran. The reason he was confirmed so easily and quickly was that even Democrats in the Senate considered him to be a serious person on foreign policy. J.D. Vance, on the other hand, was not gradual at all, right? He went in the span of one Ohio Senate primary from Donald Trump is a problem, Donald Trump represents a problem in American politics, to he proved me wrong, I'm a believer, and full about face on everything. Everything I was before exists no more, and everything I am will be defined by the visionaries that I have met along the way. He had this Saul of Tarsus moment that he put forward. Rubio's advantage in that is that he has some priors that he can stand on as he progresses. Vance's advantage is that he can say anything, right? J.D. Vance can say or do anything because he has said the only fixed point is what this movement is doing, and Donald Trump will determine what the movement is doing. So if you're betting on who can outlast inside the MAGA derby, I would say Vance has the structural advantage because he's just not connected to anything.
One, I think you're being a little too generous to Marco Rubio, but that's okay. I take your point. I mean, I agree with you that there is some sort of consistency about foreign policy in there.
Yeah.
It is sometimes hard to find. And I think that the problem with Rubio is it's sort of like Bill Clinton. I mean, I hate to say it, Chris Christie kind of had him right in that debate. The problem with Rubio is because he is such a good talker and he can talk any position, right? You could have him switch sides in the middle of a debate and he could take the other side's position and be pretty good at it.
Totally.
That people like that often end up thinking that ideas are just pieces on the board.
Right.
And you can pick them up and put them down and you can use them as you see fit because you are the unifying thing here, right? That's why Bill Clinton could take any position he needed to take because the only constant for him was him.
Yep.
And Rubio has a very similar thing. So he doesn't see any like real inconsistency in like, he's now in favor of industrial policy done right. Because remember,
done right. Not the bad industrial policy.
Right.
The good
it never
industrial
occurred
policy.
to Hayek to say, no one ever
unless
said to
you're
Hayek,
really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you think that somebody could just be really good at it? So put that aside. What I think is interesting in this exchange just now is that we have in some ways changed roles, because I was introducing a question about fundamentals, about voters and constituencies and regional differences and these kinds of things. And you went straight to putting these guys on the couch and looking inside their cabezas, which is normally what I do. And what you usually do is talk about, coalitions and constituencies and demographics and who lives in what county.
Where is J.D. Vance probably the most popular? I don't know that it's Ohio, right?
Fair.
I don't know that I don't know that Ohio would be the state in which he'd be the most popular. Who
would win an Ohio primary between Rubio and Vance if it was just a 2-person race?
Well, you'd give it to Vance because they probably don't trust Rubio. Who would win in a primary in Ohio between Vance and Vivek Ramaswamy? I don't know. That I could not tell you as handily, but I know this. This week,
if I were the Ohio voter, the answer would my response to that would be my brain's on the bathroom mirror.
Yes, but, Mike DeWine, writing in Mike DeWine.
Yes.
So this week, Donald Trump had a chance to win a Senate seat for Republicans in Georgia. He had a chance to flip a Senate seat, because what he needed to do to flip the Senate seat in Georgia was to say to Brian Kemp, Governor Kemp, I will back you to the hilt. I will tell Marjorie Taylor Greene to stay out of the race. No, I will clear the field for you. I will tell Doug Collins he's not running. I will absolutely put my foot down and make sure that you get the Republican nomination. And then I want you to go on and beat John Ossoff and get into the United States Senate. He did not do that.
No.
And if he would have done it, I don't have any special knowledge here, but if he would have done it, I feel very strongly that Brian Kemp would have said, okay, cool. If I'm not going to have any problem. And you see it in Texas also. John Cornyn. The Republicans need John Cornyn to win the Texas Senate primary. They need him, because if Ken Paxton has a Roy Moore problem,
right,
which is he can't lose the primary and he can't win the general. And if Ken Paxton is the Republican nominee for Senate in Texas and Colin Allred makes the rational choice and gets in the race in an off year where Republicans are going to struggle, they're going to lose a Senate seat in Texas, which could be resolved if Donald Trump said, Ken,
get out.
You got to stand down on this one. I know you don't like Cornyn, but I got to back him because we need him in the general, and I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to be really good to you, and I'm going to help you, but I need you to step back. And he wouldn't do it. And I think this is the way that Republicans have put themselves in danger of losing a Senate with a map that's pretty good speaks to the Vance-Rubio problem. If the point in a Republican primary election, which was the case in J.D. Vance's Ohio Senate primary, who is the most attached to Trump and who does Trump bless?
Mm-hmm.
Who has Trump given his blessing to? Rubio or Vance? Trump gets to decide, and he won't decide for a long time. Much will change between now and then, and I don't think Donald Trump Jr. will stay at his Georgetown crypto bro club and just stay on the sidelines. I assume that he'll nose around for a potential presidential nomination. If the invisible primary of the Republican Party for 2028, and there's no guarantee this will be so, but if it is so, that the invisible primary for the Republicans in 2028 is courting Donald Trump's blessing, then counties don't matter. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what district you're in. It doesn't matter that stuff. It just matters who will have the imprimatur of the sitting president.
No, I agree with that. I think where I was trying to steer this, and you were like a West Virginia mule. I could not steer you in the ways that I wanted.
My legs were uneven.
Rocky terrain, bad oats. Who knows? But where I was trying to steer you was that in that the whole idea that there is a thing called MAGA, right? That there is a coherent, unifying principle to Trumpism post-Trump, I find preposterous. And it's one of these things that gets me caught in the middle, right, in these kinds of conversations, because the left, broadly speaking, wants to see Republicans and MAGA and all these things as this consistent, unified whole that that in many ways, the further left you go, the more they believe that it is not a repudiation of conservatism, of Reaganism, or any of that kind of stuff, but the natural culmination of it, right? And on the right, they want to make it, there are a lot of people who want to believe that MAGA is this coherent, unified, serious thing, when the obvious reality, which is what you're pointing to, is that it's much more of a cult of personality than anything else, because you take Trump out of it, and there's going to be a Rubio wing, there's going to be a Vance wing, there's going to be a Cotton wing, it's going to be some sort of Dungeons and Dragons type bird with lots of wings. And then there's going to be a normie wing of some kind. And I don't think it'll be an anti-Trump wing, because I don't think you're allowed you can't win the primary by being expressly anti-Trump if current trends continue. We could get to a place where you could, but it doesn't seem likely. And so, and there's definitely going to be a DeSantis type movement within the party, and
which could be Brian Kemp.
Right? Because Brian Kemp is more capable of maintaining eye contact and one-to-one conversations than DeSantis, but he has many of the same policy positions.
Yes, exactly. And is very successful in an important state and has a good record governing its state and all of that stuff. I think the problem of the many problems that Republicans have, this is a fight that has to take place, right? This is the battle that between the many wings of the labyrinth beast has to take place. It will not take place as long as Donald Trump is around. It just won't take place because it's a cult of personality, because it's a faith. It will not take place because he will not allow it to take place. He's not going to say what Joe Biden should have said in January 1st, 2023, I'm out, you guys fight it out. You may the best person win, and I'm going to step aside and do it. Donald Trump is not going to do that, because Donald Trump gives away nothing, right? He gives nothing for free, and he will extract promises of pardons and enrichment. Our colleague Tim Carney is doing some very good work right now on the question of large-scale corruption inside the administration and large-scale corruption of the retainers and family members around the administration, and looked at that way. Do you remember Trump pardon recipient Rod Blagojevich caught on tape talking about selling Barack Obama's Senate seat?
Right. You just don't give something like that away, right?
Right. I've got this really valuable thing. I'm not just going to give it away. I think Trump looks at everything like that. I think the reason he found a kindred spirit in Blagojevich is that's the way to be. And I don't think he's going to. There are ideological differences. I don't think that as long as Donald Trump has a 30% of the American electorate that just backs him no matter what, I don't think the Republicans will get past him, will get around him. I think he'll get to pick his successor, or at least screw up the successor picking to such a degree that it becomes, again, what did he do to Republicans in the 22 midterms? What is he going to do to the Republicans in the 26 midterms? He doesn't pick. He won't choose. He will neither step back nor will he choose until he is rewarded. with something that he thinks is valuable. And to that end, I just think that there will be no clarity. And I think J.D. Vance is a better remora than I think his remora game is the tightest.
No, I think that's right. And he's the one guy the president can't fire.
Right.
Which means when he's unpopular, he will at least have time to regain popularity.
Yes.
I have to bet that Rubio does not last 4 years in this administration. He might be able to pull a Nikki Haley, and actually, in full disclosure, my wife worked for Nikki Haley at the time. Nikki Haley was the only major politician who left the administration on good terms with Trump and on good terms with voters. Right? I mean, she went downhill after that politically.
She was so close. She was so close.
So many were so close. I mean,
so close.
But she wasn't thrown out on her ass. She got a nice goodbye.
Yep.
She maintained credibility with anti-Trump people and pro-Trump people and was in really good shape. Maybe Rubio can pull that off. But there's just really unlikely that he lasts 4 years in there. Meanwhile, Vance constitutionally lasts 4 years in there because he's the vice president of the United States and he can't be fired.
Look at the Pew numbers from from their poll at 100 days. Where was Trump's big problem? Yep, he was sucking wind with independents. But if you peel it back and look one deeper, they asked people by vote. Okay, so if you voted for Donald Trump, how do you think he's doing? Among the people who were the least enthusiastic about voting for Donald Trump, he was down 25 points.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem of MAGA and the problem of all of it is it's a audience capture huge difficulty, which is they're not going to accept the other part, that 30% of the electorate will accept no substitutes, will accept no imitation. They want the hardest core version of it possible. Republicans cannot keep a coalition together with just those folks. The bid price is too high, and it's a Ken Paxton problem. It's a Marjorie Taylor Greene problem. It's the problem that they are going to keep running into. And by the way, it's the one that Democrats are getting ready to confront. Democrats are right now getting ready to confront a very similar problem, which is, will their base let them win? I don't think the MAGA base will let Republicans win. I think that they think that winning is for losers, and they're not going to allow it.
Yeah. So I mean, just to put a bow on it before we move on, that was sort of where I was trying to go, which is that all talk about how Vance is the heir apparent and he's definitely locked it up and he's going to be this generational, figure, all that kind of stuff is all nonsense. I mean, like, does he have a better chance than a lot of other people to be the Republican nominee? Sure, he's the vice president. So
he's got the best chance of anybody.
Right. But it's like, would I put money on him over the field? No.
Right. Who's got the best chance to win the U.S. Open? Let's say Rory McIlroy, he won the Masters.
Right.
Would you take McIlroy or would you take the field? You'd take the field.
Right.
And I think that's the Vance problem. And I also think that the Vance problem is it doesn't seem to be working. MAGA does not seem to be working. And they have neither the discipline to endure. People talk about Ronald Reagan and what he did 1981, 1982 a lot.
Ooh, I do not like this analogy, but I know you're not going to annoy me too much on this.
So you people talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
The difference, Reagan and Paul Volcker had a plan, and they knew that it was painful, but they believed that it would work, and then they stuck with it, and they did it, right? They broke the back of inflation, and the tax cuts kicked in, and bang, zoom, to the moon, and it worked out. Peter Navarro says, we don't care. We don't care if we crash the economy. We're going to remake manufacturing. No, you will not. I have seen what senators are saying. I have seen what Donald Trump himself is saying, and I have seen the divisions in your own administration. The idea that Donald Trump is cool with being President Two Dolls is absolute horse crap. There is no way that the Republican Party is going to say, Well, we're going to be shut out of office. But 20 years from now, people will look back and say it was the Republicans' decision to crash the economy that and impoverish the people and limit the number of toys parents could buy for their children that led us to the great sunny uplands of history. Will not happen. And what Reagan and Volcker was doing was targeted, disciplined in message, and limited in scope. What Team Trump is doing is bad, poorly messaged, ideologically incoherent, and utterly changeable. The two are totally different.
Well, you're leaving out the main reason why I dislike this analogy. You hear it all over the place, and I agree with you on all those points. But the biggest difference is that Reagan was trying to fix a problem,
right,
that America had endured,
yes,
for almost a decade, right?
Yes.
I mean, since the Nixon administration. So it went through Republican, Democratic administrations.
Even Johnson dealt with inflation.
Right. So starting with, I mean, you're right. But the wage and price control stuff is Nixon. But regardless, it was a problem that everybody knew was a problem and had to be fixed. And look, this economy has all sorts of structural issues, and I think the decline in manufacturing really isn't one of them, but there are reasonable people who do. That's a serious argument. But the economy was not in such bad shape that Trump seems to be fixing a problem in people's real lives. It seems to be making the lingering problem from the Biden years worse. And it's utterly voluntary, right?
Yep.
I mean, I'd be curious to go back and look and see how many economists actually thought Reagan's plan was bad, like on the merits. I'd be surprised. I mean, I'm sure you get some Galbraith types who would, but I suspect that the bigger part of the complaint was that it's either can't be done politically or that it's too painful and will take too long. But well,
some even said it was voodoo economics. Some even called it voodoo.
Yeah, but was that what the voodoo economics was, though? I mean,
the idea of the rising that we're going to have these trickle down economics and we're going to cut taxes dramatically. And George H.W. Bush said that it was voodoo economics and that you got to do the fundamentals.
I remember but supply side economics and telling Paul Volcker you have a free rein to rack up interest rates. Those are not synonymous things, right? So that's
no. The missing piece in the critique of Reagan's economic policy,
I agree, right? Or what Galbraith called, what was it? Horse and sparrow economics. You feed the horses, and then the poor people like the sparrows get to eat their manure.
Yeah.
All right. So one last thing on that $2 thing, since you brought it up, and I was trying to avoid going back to this,
luring you back in.
And it didn't help that you held up those $2. Like part of, I tweeted about this, but like, I am shocked at how the liberal media can't reframe the doll thing according to their views, like not necessarily mine, but like Trump is saying, these kids who got $20 or $30, and the number keeps changing to more outlandish things, right? But the kids who got $20 or $30, and maybe this year they only need 1 or 2, right? And that, I hate to sound like one of these intersectional kind of anti-capitalist people, but like that is coded at upper middle class and wealthy people. It's coded at the people who can afford $30. And the obvious question in response is, okay, maybe you're right that the kids who get $30 can make do with just 1 or 2. But what about the families that can only afford $1 or $2 and now can't afford any? What do you say to them? And the fact that nobody's asked that question, which seems to me so obvious, is really weird to me.
So it looked like, and look, the process of getting to a tax deal is going to be arduous and painful. The president he poorly invested his political capital. The idea of what you're supposed to do with political capital is you invest it in Congress and you get your agenda through. And the lure of executive action says you don't have to do that. You don't have to invest your political capital. There, you can just start doing stuff. You can just they can, everywhere you go, they can set up a little table and you can feel the satisfying squeak of Sharpie against parchment, and you can just do it yourself. The Trump agenda depends on the success of this tax package, this tax and spending package, and vastly underappreciated in Washington, D.C., or certainly about Washington, D.C. today. They certainly could fail. They certainly could fail. And they could, I think it's very unlikely that they won't extend current tax rates, but new tax cuts and middle-class tax cuts and the border stuff and the national security spending absolutely could fail because they did none of the hard work. The president did not use any of the period where he was in more total control of his party than anybody since FDR, when he had absolute, or maybe Lyndon Johnson post 64, absolute iron fist around the throat of his own party. Did not say, and this is what we're going to, and here's what we're going to do about SALT. Here's what we're going to do about Medicaid. Here's what we're going to do about da-da-da-da-da. But in this discussion has bubbled up a couple of times the politically logical thing for Republicans to do, which is to allow taxes to go up on top earners. The politically astute thing for a party that says we embrace the $1 family. We are the party of the $1 family. The correct political approach to this is, and we are going to soak the rich. We are going to let Trump said in his interview with Time magazine, I like the idea of increasing taxes for rich people, but I think it would be politically unpopular. So I looked it up. It's one of the most popular things that you could do.
Yeah.
It's a 65, 70% popular thing.
It would be unpopular in the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago, though.
Right. It would definitely be unpopular in the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago. But a lot of those people are rich enough that they just hide their money. They're not earners. Right. What's really popular is soaking people who make more than $400,000 a year. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are not incorrect about the political popularity of 400K and up, soak them. That's a 65, 70% proposition. The politically astute thing for Republicans to do would be to undo Reaganomics. Jack up taxes on top earners. Let those go up over 50% and trade that money for no tax on tips, exempt Social Security from taxes, no taxes for firefighters and police officers, and do all of that. That would be the politically astute thing to do. They are not doing it. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it because, number one, ballroom attendees do not like it. Number two, it doesn't generate enough money, right? There's not enough money there. Those people are already paying 60% of the tax, 70% of the taxes, or whatever. There's not enough money there to fill the... Did you see, by the way, the Senate plan that passed through the House would increase deficit spending by more than all of the COVID stimulus and the first round of tax cuts combined. A $6 trillion, just insane, wild spending spree. They can't get it through. There's no way that that it won't be just Thomas Massey that says, what the heck? The Freedom Caucus may have become non-existent, right? They're just a booster chapter for MAGA, but there's no way that they can get this through. They don't want to do the things to serve the $2 people. They're not. They don't want to really be the party of the $2 people. And right now, Republicans are trying to have it both ways. They want to be the party of the $30 families, but they want to cosplay. They want to act as if you've heard me talk about this before. I'm going to have to write about it. I may have to write a book about it. We destroyed the usefulness of the term evangelical. And I was part of destroying it because it was a really politically, in terms of doing demography, it It was super useful. But eventually it turned into a useless thing because it just meant white or very or whatever. It lost its connection with the thing. It ceased to represent the thing and became
the noumena and the phenomena became detached.
Exactly. Now we've done it with working class.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the data on who says they're working class.
Yeah.
Our soon-to-be former American Enterprise Institute colleague, Nate Moore, who I wish well as he goes off to be appallingly successful lawyer. Exactly. Did great work on this, which is if you test it by income and college education, the percentage of Republican college degree or more holders who describe themselves as working class is well above half. And among top earners, right? So the richest of the rich, like 60% of them say that they are working class. Working class doesn't mean anything now, except for I'm not like them. I'm not like those pointy heads at Harvard. I'm not like what George Wallace described as these pointy heads who couldn't park a bicycle straight.
Right.
They're with George Wallace. They're with the decent yeomanry, even if they have an MBA and even if they're earning $500,000 a year, they're calling themselves working class because that's how they feel. But when you get down to how persuadable voters move, it's not semiotic in that way. It's not symbolic membership in a tribe. I mean, to some degree, it can be about issues. That's why that ad about trans was so effective. It can be some tribal stuff, but people who make $60,000 a year, households with $60,000 household income, don't care about dunking on Harvard nearly as much as they care about how much their groceries cost.
Right.
Trump goes around and tells people that gas is under $2. Yeah. Gas is definitely not under $2. And you can tell people that gas is under $2, but when they go to the pump and they see that it's still $3, they know it and they're aware of it. And what killed Biden was that detachment, and doll-based economics are killing Trump and the Republicans too.
So it's funny. I've been thinking about this because Doug Irwin, free trade economist at I think Duke, was recently on Russ Roberts' podcast, Econ Talk, and Irwin makes a really good point about. He was asked about do deficits matter? Trade deficits, not budget deficits or anything like that, but
right.
Trade deficits matter. And part of his answer, which is something I've wrote about from this guy from the Dallas Fed a while back, was, well, in economics, sometimes it helps to think, would you know about a thing if we didn't collect statistics for it?
Right.
And so his point is that if we had really bad inflation, he says to his students, would you know it? And the students, well, of course, because like when I go to the grocery store, the prices would be really high and gas would be really high and prices would be high and I would know it, right? Like, well, again, if we had a recession, would you know it? And he says, well, yeah, because people would be losing their jobs and I couldn't get a raise and blah, 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 blah. It's like, now, if we had a trade deficit, would you know it? No.
Right? You would not know it.
And so this is part of the problem that Trump and these guys, a huge amount of this trade stuff is almost allegorical. Right? It's like, it's figurative, it's literary, it's imaginary, it's symbolic. It's not actually something that is, to the extent our trade deficit materializes in a tangible way for most people, it's a positive thing for most people, right? I mean, even if you include the people who lose their jobs, right? More people benefit by cheaper prices at Costco and Walmart than people are hurt by losing their steel mill jobs, all right, and that kind of thing. And
yes,
and so I think that like this is one of the it's very much like, I mean, I hate doing the horseshoe theory stuff, but like the way the entire Democratic Party got so taken over by these abstract indictments of America, these very sort of narrative-based, impressionistic things about that you could only learn in a grad school seminar about how terrible America is, that's sort of the same problem the big chunks that the Trump administration is dealing with, is that they are in the business of fixing metaphorical problems,
right,
and letting actual problems fester.
What comes to mind for me always is global warming and climate change.
Yeah.
Ask people, are you concerned about it? Yes. Do you think it's man-made? Yes. It's this problem. We're concerned about it. Okay. Will you pay to fix it? Oh, no.
Yeah.
I will absolutely not fix it. You ask Americans, do you think that it's bad that the United States imports so many consumer goods from China? Yep, I think it's bad. I think it's bad. Okay, great. We want you to pay more for your stuff. Hell no. I will absolutely not do that. And it's the same problem where these are luxury kinds of beliefs that people have. And people want to say, they don't just want to say, they believe. They believe that they want the climate to be healed, and they believe that they want manufacturing to come back to the United States. Look at the data on, do you think that there should be more manufacturing in the United States? Absolutely. Do you wish to do? Oh, no, right. I do not wish to do it. I do not wish to do it, but I think it would be great for you. Right. This is the Judge Schmales in the pro shop. Look at this is the worst looking hat I've ever seen. You buy a hat like this, you get a free bowl of soup. Oh, but it looks good on you, though. You should go do backbreaking labor in a vertically integrated steel mill. You should stand on the floor of an open hearth furnace, because I will feel better about things, because I don't want us to import steel from Bulgaria. I want you to go do it. I will sit in a cubicle, or I will work from home on my laptop. The problem the problem of Americans misidentifying who else is in their country. What percentage of people? Right. This like the old gag about asking people what percentage of the U.S. budget goes to foreign aid, and people say it's $1 in $5, and it's like, no, it's 1 in 1,000. Yeah. And where Americans think other Americans are is they have a distorted image of it. And what I know for sure, I have heard senators say it, and they definitely understand it. They know that American voters will pay no price and suffer no burden to resolve a amorphous kind of problem that is a spiritual problem, not a practical one. They are equity. The trade people and the industrial policy people are equity people on the right. They are into equity. That's what they want. And people will they will not pay for it, and they will punish the party that is associated with it in a much more profound way, even than what they did to Joe Biden. Joe Biden had the chance to say, I hear you, I get it, we're bringing the spending under control. The only job that I'm focused on for the next year is bringing inflation down, and we're going to do everything that we can. We're going to be obsessively focused on prices to do what Reagan did with the inflation in the economy in the first 2 years. That's what we're doing. And then your investment of political capital gives you the opportunity to do the next thing. There's a version of, if Donald Trump bonked his head and woke up and said, I don't know what I've been doing. This has been crazy town. I have no idea. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to focus on the economy, and we're going to focus on the border, and we're going to get immigration nailed down, and we're going to focus on inflation. And that I'm going to be like a man possessed working on that. If you succeeded in it, then you would have the political capital to say, now I ask you, and again, back to Reagan. Reagan spent the first part of his presidency obsessively focused on inflation and the economy and inflation, and did it. What did that allow him then to do? To engage in a problem that didn't directly affect most Americans' lives, but they felt a spiritual, moral angst about, which was the Cold War in the Soviet Union. And he was able to do a thing that he wouldn't have been able to do. If Ronald Reagan would have started out and said, the only thing I care about is defeating the Soviet Union, he would not have been able to do it. He had to deal with people's upfront concerns first to invest his political capital wisely, and then he could work on a project that would have been much harder to do.
Okay, so 3 things. One, it is really weird because I was about to interject Caddyshack when you brought up Caddyshack, but not that scene.
I don't think it's that weird.
But like a completely different scene came to my mind because it's a phrase we use in my house all the time. When Bill Murray is over at Chevy Chase's house, and
you got a pool over there?
We got a pool and a pond. A pond would be good for you.
Pond would be good for you. Natural spring water could be really good.
And then 2, on the point about how people don't want to pay for it, my favorite example of this, which Jessica Riedel first pointed out to me a long time ago, was there's some polling of Bernie Bro primary supporters in the 16
I know this poll. I know this poll.
And they're asked, and I'll get the details wrong. Directionally, I'm right though. Like, and you can correct me, but like they're asked, are you in favor of
Medicare for all,
and free college, right? Free college tuition, right? And they're 60, 70%. And then they say, would you pay $100 more a month for these things?
Absolutely not.
And the number drops almost in half, right? And it's like, these morons, like, you were literally being offered tens of thousands of dollars of unsustainable spending for your personal betterment, but you don't think you should be taxed another $100 a month for it.
Well, make the rich people pay for it.
Right.
Make the millionaires and billionaires pay for it, and they'll pay for it. And the other thing, American politics typically divides between people who feel like they need something and people who basically feel like they're doing just fine. We're doing just fine. So the Republican coalition for a long time was, we're fine. Stop helping, stop doing, we're fine over here. And they're obviously not thinking about all the services that they do receive, and they're not thinking about all the invisible transfer payments and all of that other stuff. But the people who are like, I'll be fine. Those other people need help maybe, but I'll be fine. And so what you saw among the Bernie bros was, well, though I'm different. I'm different from those other people. I should be left alone. I should be left alone. I shouldn't be sucked into the gaping maw of the state. I should be left alone, but I want it for those other people.
All right, we don't have a lot of time left, but something to talk about with Sarah a little bit on the Dispatch podcast. I'm sure that has occurred to you.
Okay.
But in the context of the 100 days, and also what brings it back to front of mind is your almost quaint discussion of Reagan dealing with Congress back in the days when How a Bill Becomes a Law was still on TV, and I was watching it. The whole point, and the first 100 days is a really stupid thing to me. It's almost as pernicious as the term mandate, which we don't have to get into. But the whole point of the first 100 days was FDR's vow to get legislation through Congress, and there is no. For listeners out there, Stirewalt is pointing wildly at the camera as if I am the man.
Preach.
Preach. So, it's a sincere question. It was interesting. I was going to try and get us there when you're talking about the big beautiful bill stuff, but let's say, which I think odds are strong. You can quantify it if you like in your propeller beanie, pollster mode. But Democrats are probably going to take back the House.
Yep.
Probably not going to take back the Senate, though it's possible the Republicans screw that up, right? With the Paxton scenarios and all that kind of stuff.
And Louisiana, Bill Cassidy down in Louisiana is going to get primaried.
And you know what states get really screwed by protectionism? Louisiana. I mean, like that's
and Texas and Georgia.
But like Louisiana is I looked it up. It is the most internationalized economy because of all those ports and all the liquefied gas, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, and all the seafood, and
delicious seafood,
and people peeing in public. But anyway, I have my issues with New Orleans. But where was I? with the exception of the big beautiful bill thing, what actually changes if Trump is unwilling or unable to actually get stuff through Congress now? I mean, like, I think they nominated their first judge, right? Yeah. They haven't even been like cranking these things through the Senate for the judges, which is insane to me. So like, what changes if the Democrats take over the House because he's not using the legislative branch at all as we speak?
When the Senate said, don't do one bill, even Ron Johnson said, maybe do three, right? Because of the way reconciliation works, there could be 3 tickets to ride with 51 votes. And do the hard but popular thing first, right? Get everybody together and pass a tax cut. That's why people vote for Republicans. People vote for Republicans for a variety of reasons. But high on the list is low taxes. People like the tax cuts. And they said, you got to do this hard thing first, and then you'll reap the rewards. No, we're doing one thing. We're just going to raise the stakes on it so high. And by the way, as they're doing this, it is against the backdrop of, at some point now, the Treasury Department is going to say, we've scraped all the change out of the couch cushions. We've done everything we can, and we need a debt ceiling lift. Are they going to be able to add a debt ceiling lift to this already unwieldy package?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. And what will they have to trade away with Democrats? The likelihood that Republicans will hold the Senate, you still would have to favor Republicans because Democrats would have to really
run a bad table.
Yeah, they would have to. Not only they've got these retirements. I don't think right now anybody thinks that Republicans are favored to win Minnesota, Michigan, and New Hampshire, but it's a consideration. Democrats are going to have to pay attention there, and they could get a goofball nominee through in one of those states. Then you've got Maine, and you hate to bet against Susan Collins, given her astonishing success in 2020. But it's a very different moment because in 2020, Maine separates its electoral votes by congressional district. And the folks in the Republican-leaning district in Maine were turning out and forced to vote for Donald Trump, and that helped Susan Collins big time in 2020. It's not that. And it's going to be very, very hard for her to stay on. Then you go down to North Carolina and Tom Tillis. Is he going to get primaried? Probably. You'd have to think so. And if Roy Cooper decides to get in the race down there, the North Carolina Republican Party is insane. It's as insane as Georgia's Republican Party. It's just totally off the rails.
Well, you know what was a good sign of that?
Yeah.
Nominating a guy who described himself, this is not pejorative, as a black Nazi.
Yeah.
And spent a lot of time on some really funky porn sites and
commenting. I always love the commenters, like Ken Bone, and we're like, hey, just thrilled to be part of this community of pantsless guys just weighing in on my thoughts on this content. So you've got, those are the 2 most vulnerable seats for Republicans. But then if with Kemp not running, Marjorie Taylor Greene could be the nominee in Georgia. John Ossoff could get a pass. You go down to Louisiana. If John Bel Edwards, the former Democratic governor of Louisiana, gets in, if Cassidy gets knocked out in the primary, which it looks like he might, that could be a D flip. You go over to Texas. Ken Paxton, I think, loses to Colin Allred if Colin Allred runs. He's a very appealing candidate right for this kind of a year. So you look at the map and you say, do Republicans go down to 51? Do they go to 50? Like you can see it. Donald Trump is going to, in almost every likelihood, get impeached again. Right? The Democrats are now saying, well, we're not sure about whether we want to impeach him if we he's going to make you impeach him, Democrats. Yeah. He's going to demand that you impeach him, whatever he has to do to make sure that you have to do it. He is going to be the thrice impeached Donald Trump. There will be no legislative agenda. There will be nothing. There will be ashes in the mouths of Washington for 2 years. If
again,
Democrats,
to quote Judge Smales, you'll get nothing and like it.
You'll get nothing. I want a hot dog. I want a hamburger. I want a cheeseburger.
No, I want a cheeseburger. I'm sorry.
The there will be nothing. Thune and company told Trump, do it now. And by the way, when they tried it the right way 8 years ago, it took them until December anyway. It took them until December. And the last thing I'll say about all of that, to me right now, it looks like the most likely scenario is that Republicans end up punting on everything else and just pass what ends up being an extension of the 2017 tax cuts. How does that feel for voters? Congratulations. What's your big legislative accomplishment? We've kept things exactly the same.
Yeah, we've extended the status quo into the future.
We've extended the status quo into the future. Congratulations, America. And now that's why I ask for your vote, is because I did not allow your taxes to go up, is thin. And without Mike Pence, without Mark Short, without Trump, no one was more surprised that he became president in 2017 than Donald Trump was. And by accident, he had no transition. And Mike Pence got to do that thing. And Mike Pence, longtime legislator with a very good legislative team led by Mark Short, they did it. They worked with Paul Ryan. They worked with Mitch McConnell. They hammered out a deal and they got it done. You think J.D. Vance, when he goes over to the Senate and says, do what we're telling you, or Elon Musk will come and destroy you in your primary, do you think that that makes Senate Republicans more likely? I think it does not make them more likely. And I think that everybody is heading for their battlements, and they are now expecting and preparing for a bad cycle. And if you're Susan Collins or you're Tom Tillis or you're Bill Cassidy, at a certain point, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose, right? Yeah. And you say, I better do what I think people in my state want me to do. And maybe I'll get primaried, maybe I'll lose, but I better get a dose of the act right here, and that makes them even harder to corral.
All right, we get, normally we waste like 15 minutes.
I know,
on this thing at the top with important conversations about the best breakfast meats, and
link sausage.
See, I just kind of feel like you're a Scrapple man. But
gross, dude. Gross.
And then of course, well, I mean, I actually like Scrapple. It's potted meat that I have huge problems with.
How about a Vienna sausage?
There was
or
a time,
as they are correctly known, a Vienna sausage.
But we didn't do much of that, and we didn't talk about sitcom beverages like Ripple. But
have you ever had, by the way, a fried bologna sandwich?
I don't think I actually have. I'm trying to remember. I believe it's good.
Let me just say, just very quickly, fried bologna sandwich at the deli. Ask them to cut it a little thicker. Now you're probably going to have to score the edges. You're going to have to cut through it. And you're going to put that down on your griddle. You're going to get it because you want to score it so it doesn't curl up, so it doesn't just make a dome. Now, I don't know where seems like maybe an outside of Appalachia thing, but they're going to put American cheese on it and do it that way and put it on white bread. No. What you're going to do, you're going to put some hot sauce on a plate. And you're going to turn that hot bologna, griddled bologna, over in the hot sauce. You're going to put it on a hamburger bun with shredded lettuce and more mayonnaise than you think appropriate. And I am here to tell you, that's going to take you on a journey. You're going to go. You're going to go on a journey.
I can see it. I'm sold.
Okay, just saying.
But I was going to, because the whole reason I started with the Alcatraz thing, and we just took it way too seriously. Is because I wanted to know, what are your favorite depictions of Alcatraz from TV or cinema, if you have any?
Well,
everyone wants to say The Rock, but
The Rock was okay. I give The Rock a 7. Birdman of Alcatraz,
great movie.
A genuinely great movie. That's a genuinely great movie. But I of course love like the Alcatraz of the sort of children's cartoons and sitcom, the sort of Batman live action version of Alcatraz, every cartoon floating out there in a rock with shark fins going around it.
So There's also Escape from Alcatraz, which was a Clint Eastwood movie, which was not a bad
the one
movie.
that may have inspired our new federal penal policy.
That's right. But I gotta say, best Alcatraz content, So I Married an Axe Murderer. Where Phil Hartman is the tour guide, ex-guard there.
God bless you, Jonah Goldberg.
Explaining how Machine Gun Kelly had what we in the prison community call a bitch.
Which, of course, takes me, first of all, yes. And So I Married an Axe Murderer, hugely underappreciated.
Really awesome. Underappreciated. Great movie.
Just an awesome movie, more than just head, move your head.
Yes.
It's so much more than that. But it also, of course, takes us to a related Phil Hartman performance in CB4.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes. CB4 is another underrated, fantastic movie. Chris Rock.
Dave Chappelle's in that too, right?
I believe Chappelle is in it, but he plays the censorious, blue nose state representative or something who is trying to crack down on gangster rap. And the CB4's hit song is called Sweat from My Blank.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, and under no circumstances will you play Sweat from My Blank. But he doesn't say blank. And it's one of the funniest lines ever. It's just great.
So I think the youngins.
Yes. Nice.
Do not understand why, what an incredible loss Phil Hartman was. And you start, I was talking actually to Jake Tapper about this because we went on a So I Married an Axe Murderer riff for a while. And I told him, and this is true, and longtime listeners of this podcast probably can back me up on this. When I'll do my whole spiel about the Enlightenment and how there are different kinds of enlightenments, I will often say, and I've written, I think in 2 books, maybe 3, that when it comes to enlightenments, I'm with So I Married an Axe Murderer. If it's not Scottish, it's crap.
It's crap. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Gosh, I love that movie.
And then I went down on a rabbit hole. I'm sure you've seen it, but the Simpsons Planet of the Apes musical.
Yeah, Dr. Zaius. Yes,
where
Dr.
Phil Hartman,
Zaius.
Phil Hartman is the astronaut, and he starts to talk, and all the apes go, he can talk, and then Phil Hartman goes, I can sing. So good. All right. Do we have anything else that really require? I mean, none of this really required conversation in the first place, but it is good to have you back, my friend. And again, congratulations on your lovely bride. Big fan. And as you know, or as you should know, you do not say congratulations to the bride.
No.
You say best wishes.
Or in Jessica's case, you say good luck.
Yes. Or there's still time to get out of here.
Get annulled. The paperwork hasn't filed.
And there you have it. Thank you, Chris Stirewalt. He's on this News Nation channel thing, colleague of mine in AI. I never introduce you anymore because
watch us Sunday mornings at 10.
Sunday mornings at 10, Hill TV. It's funny. I tuned in, and then you weren't there on Sunday, but you had a good week.
Yeah, I believe I do get one day. I get one day off. One day off.
Yeah, for getting married. So
that's right.
Yeah. All right, my friend. I'm sure you'll be back.